There it is.
Awesome. Sweet. All right. Let me see if I can nail my spiel in one go,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. Just because I like to record it while we're live. That way you know just how I feel about you. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the People's Penicillin Podcast. It's a podcast of hope because I believe hope is the penicillin against all of the outrageous emotions that all of us are probably feeling in this crazy world of ours. And I want to bring on guests that inspire hope in us, from large acts of almost superhero duty down to the things we may not even notice, those trivial, seemingly small things that really can add up to making the world a better place. Because if we all did that, I think that's how that happens. So my guest today is no exception to that. Troy Ulshoeffer. Did I say that right?
Man, you are so close, but it's you chauffeur. I'll sit in the back seat.
Ulshoeffer.
You chauffeur. I'll sit in the back seat.
Ulshoeffer.
Yep. Silent
No
letters,
L.
the
You
whole
told me.
nine. I get it.
I was so close. Troy Ulshoeffer is someone who was in the Navy. And am I correct about this? Correct me at any point in this. I did my homework. So if I get anything wrong, I'm going to be devastated. Was in the Navy, decorated, retired. Him and his wife decided they wanted to minimize their lifestyle, selling everything. They get a homestead in the middle of nowhere
Mm-hmm.
and start building homes, tiny homes, not only for themselves, but those less fortunate, including victims of human trafficking. And then went through a devastating life change that changed the tone of the content that I was seeing from him. And I'm really excited to talk about your journey because I think I've seen you through everything from vet talk to homesteading. You've touched on human trafficking, some government corruption, your dissatisfaction with the Bush administration in your time on duty. And I've seen you go through so much, man. It's a genuine pleasure to have you here. I'm very excited to dig in and just kind of learn a little bit about your mentality and what's carried you from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah.
So welcome, man.
I, I
Seriously, thank you
I
for being here.
appreciate that. And for your listeners, it's very important that they understand. We said this before we started recording. This is about a year in the making. Um, Tony reached out to me maybe October of last year, and we're going to get into
Yep.
all the reasons why it was pushed to August of 2024. And he covered a lot there. In order to explain how I've arrived where I'm at today, though, I have to do like a full explanation. So with that comes a lot of rambling. So if and when you have questions, or if and when you need to intervene or say, "Hey Troy, first off, I have one question before we really start going. Can I cuss?"
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
I'm totally fucking fine with that.
okay, some podcasts don't. I've done a lot of podcasts in my day, and some are kind of apprehensive about, colorful language, so I want to be respectful. Um That's where the whole kick
I
rocks with
love that
flip.
about you.
That's where the whole kick rocks with flip flops things comes from. A little thing from back in my Navy days. I'd be sitting in Devo meetings and senior enlisted meetings, and I'd be just dropping f bombs. They're like, "Look, Chief, you can't. You need to pull it back a little bit." And I'm like, what's a great way of saying "go f yourself"? But in like a PG way. So kick rocks with flip flops, cool breeze became like my thing. And then it became a whole slogan. There's t-shirts, the whole nine. But I digress.
I love that. I love that so much. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Kick rocks with flip flops.
Cool breeze. So you got it. The cool. So that's how I punctuate it. There's a little right hook at the end of the two jabs. Kick rocks with flip flops, and then you hit them with the cool breeze uppercut. Just to be a condescending ass, to let them know what I'm really saying is, go fuck yourself, dude. So yeah, there it is.
So Cool Breeze is like their title. That's like in
Cool.
place of like Buddy.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. Hey, friend. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Okay. No,
yes.
I'm here for it. I totally am.
So
All right.
so here's some background to myself. And gosh, it's really hard to find a starting point because that was a broad introduction. And I appreciate you doing your homework. I am a retired Navy vet. Um, I did 20 years. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to be really careful. I don't know what side of TikTok you may be on, but I am permanently stuck in mill talk and vet talk. Sometimes that bleeds into the overall arena of your FYP. And right now there is a lot of um crazy wild shit going on in that arena with veterans showing other veterans DD-214s, and like anything that's ever been said online, they're picking it apart and using, very egregious words like stolen valor, which for us in the veteran community and active duty community, there's nothing worse. I'd rather you swear on my mother's grave than call me stolen valor. So, because of that, I was medically retired, okay, in March of 2023. And that was due to an injury sustained in Afghanistan in collaboration with a botched carpal tunnel surgery. So I had bilateral carpal tunnel surgery and it got botched. And I'm unable to be like in a push up position or grip anything over 30 pounds. And so I was faced
Oh,
what's
wow.
called a med board. And after 19 years and 6 months of serving, 6 months from retirement, the 20-year mark, which is the retirement mark for the military, if you so desire. My plan was to keep going. Um, it was decided by a panel of medical experts that my services were no longer needed. I was able to get a partial retirement out of that, full 100% VA disability, and then was also compensated with a stipend that's called CRSC, uh, combat related specialty compensation, meaning there was an egregious injury that happened to your boy that was combat related in a combat theater, Afghanistan, and a percentage was assigned to that injury that allots me a certain amount of money on top of my VA disability. So that's about as deep down that rabbit hole as I need to go. But it's important I say that because it's a really volatile time to be a veteran with the political environment that we're in. It kind of started with Tim Walz and has digressed into some crazy wild shit on social media. So I'm going to put a pin in all that. Okay. Uh, Served 19 years and some change in the Navy. I am medically retired, honorable discharge, all that good stuff, right? Um,
Hmm.
but how I arrived where I'm at is from 2010 to 2016, I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida. It's a place that I call home. I frequent it often. I'm still relatively close, and I'll be very vague with my current location, and you'll understand why here in a second. But I'm
Okay.
close enough to Pensacola to visit. Uh, I have two sons, and at the time from 2010 to 2016, that was the heart of my children growing up. It was the last year of elementary school, all of junior high, the beginning of high school. And I bring that up for a reason, and we'll get to it. We PCS, which is a permanent change of station. We move to the west side of the country. In 2016, I'm attached to a Marine Corps unit. So my job in the Navy was medical. I am a corpsman. My rank was E7, which is a chief petty officer, and I was attached to the Marine Corps units. So we call it a
Hmm.
greenside doc. Everybody calls me doc. When you see me on TikTok, you'll always see the Marines say, what's up, doc? There's a reason for that because they call the medical personnel, the Navy guy who's embedded with Marines, doc.
Hmm.
And we transfer out there. I do 3 years. And at that time, both of my children graduate high school in Aurora, Colorado, which is a hotbed of news topics currently for other reasons. But I was out at Buckley Air Force Base with an artillery battery, and I was their active duty medical chief out there. So you fast forward to December of 2019. I get my new orders. I am going to be transferred to a light armored reconnaissance unit, still on the West Coast, but my children are going to stay in Colorado. And this is my wife and I's initial leap into being empty nesters. Okay. We buy our first tiny house and we want to try out this way of living because we wanted to try experiences over things. You know what I'm saying? There was
Oh yeah, totally with that.
we wanted to see the world, but we couldn't because our mortgage was thousands and thousands of dollars. Uh I we get to this new unit, we get into our tiny home, and 3 months later, it's March of 2020. I don't think we have to go down the rabbit hole of what happened then. There was a global impact, right? March
we,
20.
we could, we could.
Oh, well, yeah, we can't. We definitely can if we definitely go down the world of politics. March,
Depends on how long you want to put off your chores for the night.
buddy, I'm yours until we put a bow on this bitch. So
I'm here for it.
it's March of 2020, and two things I want to say before I continue. One, everything that I'm about to mention, I have the full permission of everyone I'm about to talk about. I have told this story. I've been interviewed by ABC News on not thousands. That's an exaggeration. Dozens of podcasts, a lot of written media about this. So again, what I'm about to tell you, I have full permission from all parties I'm about to talk about. And two, things are about to get really dark. Just know there's a light at the end of the tunnel and there's a happy ending to this story. So bear with me. All right. It's March.
I'm ready.
It's March of 2020. My wife and I are in Eagle Mountain, Utah, in a tiny house. We are 3 months into our initial uh, empty nest era. And we get a call from one of my sons, my 18-year-old son. If I get emotional during this, it's okay. Just let me deal with that and I will process and move forward in the story. My youngest son calls my wife and I, and he is having a mental health crisis, is the only way I can verbalize that and not make it more egregious than what it was. It was scary as fuck as a father. And it was at the point to where law enforcement was called and we were able to literally and figuratively, so both of those things, talk him off the ledge. He was calling us to say goodbye.
I cannot imagine.
So once we were able to get him in a safe place, we started drilling down like, how did we end up here? Like, what is going on with you? And what we learned was that when I was stationed in Pensacola from 2010 to 2016, which is why I brought it up, he had been exploited by a male adult figure. Now, there's a lot of ways I can take this story. I can take it in the fact of what did we do from there? How did I feel as a father who's supposed to be the protector? Who is the fucking human trafficking guy? Because what I hadn't mentioned was that from 2010 to 2016, I was a volunteer worker for an anti-human trafficking organization way before it became this big buzzword and became so mainstream. My wife and I were involved in advocacy work in the Pensacola area. In the military, we have these things called GMTs, General Military Trainings. We have to do them annually. For the most part, all of them are very repetitive, meaning each year they may do some updates to them, but you're going to do some online training. It's probably about cyber awareness. There's one called TIP, Trafficking in Persons. I've been doing it since I enlisted in 2003. I had become such a subject matter expert on the topic that in lieu of people going and doing these click through online trainings, I was being brought in by COs and XOs to do a face to face training in order for them to get their little tick mark for their annual, okay, I know what human trafficking is. So I'm the guy that's talking to parents about how to keep their kids safe, right? So you add that into the fact that my son now has revealed he was exploited. And a lot of people have a lot of hangups, not hangups, that's the wrong word. A lot of people have some preconceived notions of what human trafficking is or what exploitation is. My son never disappeared. He wasn't kidnapped. He was home every night. That does not mean that he was not exploited, that he was not trafficked, that both of those things can be true. And so my wife packs up her car in Utah and picks up my son. And Pensacola is kind of home. It's where we have family, it's where we have a support system, it's where our foundation is. And we still owned a home here. We were renting it out when we moved away, but it just so happened to be open when all this shit went down. And my wife grabs my son in Colorado, and they come here to start going through some counselings, sexual trauma counselings, other things, right? As far as I go, I'm stuck back in Utah, just spiraling. I have failed as a father. I have no one here. My son is a wreck. And the Navy has a thing called HUMS orders, HUMS. It stands for humanitarian orders. And the 30,000 foot view to explain that is you can apply for what's called humanitarian orders if there's some familial reason, emergency that requires you to pull chocks and go somewhere else and deal with that emergency, regardless of how long you've been at your command. Uh, no matter what, it's just things are so bad, your family needs you, and the Navy's going to pave the way for it. Mind you, I'd only been at my
Right.
new command for 3 months. For them to even approve something like this, they would have to be willing to be without their medical guy, their lead medical guy for a Marine Corps unit. My orders were for 4 years. If they let me go, they would be without that for 3 years and 9 months, which is unheard of. If you add on top of the fact that in the military in March, April, May of 2020, nobody moved. Everybody was locked. Nobody was doing change of stations.
Right.
Nobody was doing
Wow.
anything. But my
Wow.
first sergeant was like, the details of what happened to my son were so egregious. And that's about as much detail as I'll give. And this should tell you how awful it was that when I applied for HUMS orders, when my command said, we're willing to take this hit, like, Troy, go be with your son and your wife and deal with this. I applied for HUMS orders, and in the midst of nobody moving within DOD, no one, the Navy said, yeah, pack your shit and we're going to pay your way. And they did. And in the first week of June, it
Wow.
took a few weeks, I mean, admin, but in as far as the Navy goes, in the midst of COVID, it was incredibly fast. I am forever, you may hear me talk shit about the military or the Navy. I want to make something clear. Let me say this on your podcast with my face on this camera. I am forever fucking grateful for my government and the US Navy doing right by me and allowing me to be with my son to walk through this healing journey that he so desperately needed. Without it, I don't know where either of us would be. Like,
Wow.
it's a big deal what they did for me. So I pack up my
He
stuff.
needed his father
Oh,
for sure. I
yeah,
mean,
man.
that's universally known. Like you need dad. in that space and time.
And I had
I mean,
my
how did you
go ahead.
how did that's so much to unpack, and there's so many and I didn't know the details of that instance, and now knowing that, there's just so many instances of intense darkness
Mm.
on your journey that I'm just wondering, at that time, was there a way about you? Did you have a way that you handled extremely stressful situations? Like, how did you, were you like a driven by temper, or do you shut down? Like, I can't imagine unpacking all of that just within a few short years.
It
But in the immediate after effects, like, how did you see yourself maneuvering it
it's
and
that'll
navigating
kind
that space for yourself?
yeah, I was burning white hot. And
I imagine.
there's a thing about anger. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. However, for longevity purposes, it burns white hot for a very short amount of time. And then you're just kind of left with, what the fuck? What do I do now? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened, right? I end up back here in
Mm,
Pensacola. I'm administratively attached to a unit to where the majority of the time, my final year plus in the military, I would call in the morning to my command and say, "Hey, it's Chief Ulshoeffer. I'm alive." And they're like, "Cool, man. Hear from you tomorrow." It's not like I really necessarily did much. When you're on Hums orders, the point is for you to be involved in whatever it is that made you arrive on Hums orders, which was a lot of travel, a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling. But what I also did in my spare time when I came back here, and remember, I'm familiar with this area. I was stationed here for a long time and had made points of contact and had already been involved with human trafficking and exploitation. Well, here in Pensacola, there's an organization called to Rescue. It is founded and ran by a retired Master Chief. His name is Brad Dennis. For true crime aficionados, he is the person who uh, led the search and rescue efforts for a kidnapping and murder of a young girl. Her name was Polly Klass, Klass, in California back in the 90s. That's how long he's been involved in this type of work. And he, as a
mm,
retired Master Chief, there was already this, connection between him and I. We knew each other from when I was stationed here before. And when I came
mm.
back, he knew why I was coming back. He knew I was passionate. I almost felt like I had red ink in the ledger as a dad. Like, Brad put me into work, like, help me make another dad not feel like I feel. I'll do anything, because he has his nonprofit called to rescue is a search and rescue team. And let me clarify a few things before I move on. It's not that vigilante bullshit you see on YouTube. It's not predator hunters. There's no kicking in doors. No one's fucking haloing out of helicopters and throwing flashbangs into pedophiles' houses. That is nonsense bullshit. As the father of a survivor, I loathe that shit so much. You're doing it for clickbait, and I know it, and you know it. No justice is
Mm.
being had by that bullshit that those people do online.
So is it like more like slow, quiet,
So
investigative,
there's a
like,
rapport with law enforcement where they literally will give his organization cases. And there's a lot of OSINT work, a lot of open source intelligence digging. There's a lot of surveillance, a lot of report
mm,
writing, things like that. It's not a kinetic activity as a nonprofit. I want to make that clear, because a lot of people think it's putting on your flak jacket and you're pulling. It's Tim Ballard in the Sound of Freedom movie. It looks nothing
mm,
like that in the domestic United States. If you do that, you'll go to jail. You'll go to jail. It's not legal. So anyone that puts on Front Street that that's what they're doing, they're either one, a criminal, or two, they're full of shit. So be mindful of that, because I know it's a grift nowadays. A lot of people, they walk around with their pedophile hunter hats with the silhouette of an AR. And I just look at them like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you really
That's
doing?
insane.
I hate it. I hate it.
Well, and it seems like the whole thing escalated during the Epstein situation, and
Yeah, man.
that was back in what, 19? Summer of 19?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is how many people still didn't realize what human trafficking was. I remember I was in the Model UN in college. This would have been '07, and someone had brought up the term human trafficking, maybe, yeah, '07, '08. And I had not heard that before. When they gave me the rundown of like where this is happening, Southeast Asia, South America, some Eastern European places, so on and so on, I was shook. I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean human trafficking? Like, I don't understand. Like, the concept baffled me, and I couldn't believe that it existed in the 21st century. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe that, not only that, but it was an industry.
It still is.
And not only just an industry, but it's also a lifestyle, like a very subversive, quiet, and I think more in the way that you're talking about. It's not the international crime lords sort of situation, which I'm sure to a degree may exist.
You know what,
I mean,
Tony?
if
Let's
it's
let's say this. Let's say all of that is true. Let's say
uh-huh,
let's say that Hollywood and Tom Hanks and adrenochrome and QAnon and all the other fucking shit that's attached to the term human trafficking. Let's just say it's all true, okay? Just for the sake of
mm,
this conversation. That does
mm,
not mean that Troy Ulshoeffer's son, little Susie down the street in the trailer park, who has an uncle who has drug debt, little Billy, who's 2 blocks down from the trailer park that's inside of an apartment building with his dad, who has to pay off whatever other kind of debt he has or his own urges. These things happen. And what I hate about where the topic of human trafficking has gone is that it's always this fantastical story. It's P. Diddy. It's Jeffrey Epstein.
right,
It's all of these
right,
huge things. It's adrenochrome and the harvesting of children's blood. It's not
sure,
Troy Ulshoeffer's son and a dude that nobody knows or will know ever. It's never that. And that's kind of where this all ties back to how we ended up in this tiny house I'm talking to you in now, right? So I'm back in
mm,
Pensacola. It's the summer of 2020. I get involved in this search and rescue team. And within that first few months of my wife and I both doing it, she was a case manager. So she would handle all of the intake. She dealt with the parents of missing kids. My wife is a fucking saint. And if I don't talk
mm.
about her too much on this podcast, then shame on me, because she is a fucking incredible human being. We've been married 25 years. I wouldn't be alive without her. So we're doing all of this stuff. We're doing the search and rescue. We learn there's like, everybody loves to cheer. Everybody will post these news articles. 17 individuals rescued from human trafficking ring. And the internet goes,
Yep.
hooray! And we all pat ourselves on the back and throw confetti, and somebody's eating cake. Here's the thing. That is literally the fucking beginning of any kind of healing or restoration process for survivors. If you truly care about this topic, plan to be in it for the long haul, and it's painful as shit, right? So
I can't imagine the sorrow.
there is so much
I
trauma
can't.
to unpack and deal with, and it's not going to be dealt with in a weekend. So you have
Right.
individuals that are pulled out. So you pull them out, the articles are written, everyone goes hooray. What's next, right? Well, I'm going to tell you what's next,
Right.
because I've been a part of this for years now. There's a thing called respite care. Typically, it's 48 to 72 hours. It's a facility where law enforcement will take reports, forensic interviewers will interview the survivor, medical treatment is given to the survivor to deal with whatever medical issues may be needed, And then typically what will happen is they are transferred to a state certified safe house. 6, 12, 18 months, depending on whether they have to go through alcohol and drug rehab, because a lot of survivors are hooked on one or both of those through no fault of their own, because their predators,
Mm.
traffickers, or pimps hook them into that. And that's kind of that fish hook that keeps them in, right?
Hmm. Right.
But what we were finding, my wife and I saw, was the recidivism of some of these survivors. We would get a case, we'd work it, we'd find them, we'd pull them out, we'd get them placed. And 6 months later, that person's name was popping up again. And we had to go find them. We're like, what the hell is happening? And what we learned was that the vulnerabilities of a lot, and not all, but a lot of survivors of human trafficking and exploitation are the precipice with which predators can get their meat hooks in. Meaning, a lot of human trafficking survivors don't have a formal education. They have no financial stability. They don't have a trade. They don't have a career. They don't have housing. They don't have food. So it's wonderful what these state certified safe houses do. One, keep them safe, put them through their aftercare services, their trauma counselings, what have you. But when that's over, they're relaunched into society with no life skills, no anything. And those vulnerabilities allow someone else, if not their old pimp, their old trafficker, to kind of re enter the fray and be like, hey, I see you're struggling. You're living out on the streets. You can have this bedroom in my house, and I'm going to give you 3 square meals, so on and so forth. I'm going to need you to do X, Y, and Z, though. Sounds good to somebody who's sleeping on the fucking street and hungry, right? This ain't victim
Right.
blaming, and I hope that nobody takes it as that. Desperation breeds desperate decisions. So,
Yeah.
what we decided to do, I know this is a long fucking journey, but I'm about to land the plane. In February of 2021, my wife and I sell our beautiful dream home that we owned in Pensacola, 3,200 square feet in Perdido Key, which is a suburb of Pensacola. It's beautiful. White sandy beaches, clear clue water, blue angels train over our house, right? Every Tuesday. We watch them do their little shit. We sell it at the height of the market. COVID is still a huge thing. And we buy 21 acres of raw land in the neighboring state, Alabama, an hour west of Pensacola. And we were so locked in, my wife and I both, that we were going to be a part of the solution of this particular issue for the rest of our lives, that we took the dice of life and said, fuck it. And we literally sold our house on April 1st of 2021 and moved out with a borrowed RV that we only had for 10 days. The person we borrowed it from had to have it back on April 10th. When I say raw piece of land, I mean 21 acres of no power, no water, no infrastructure, no septic, no anything, no nothing, no nothing. There was nothing but bushes, trees, sticks, dirt. Okay. Raw land. And on day 8, uh, we purchased a shed that you could get from Lowe's, 28 by 10, had it delivered, and started converting it into a livable space. And it ultimately ended up converting that into the first tiny home on what is called the Burn It Down Ranch. We can talk about how we named the ranch, and it has a meaning why we call it the Burn It Down Ranch. And over the course of the last 3 years, 3.5 years, uh, where we now run a complete 501c3 with all that good paperwork that can be verified. And we have 5 tiny homes out here on the land. We have a yoga and meditation studio house. We have a cold plunge deck. I have a small arms weapons range and medical training facility. All the infrastructure is laid in, and we take referrals from state certified safe houses and individuals that complete that program but still need a little bit extra, meaning they need to go get their GED, they need to get more financially stable, they need to learn a trade. They come here and do that to mitigate those vulnerabilities. So when they fully relaunch back out, we can kind of shore up those things that would make them get preyed upon by those that want to do them harm.
That's incredible, man. And that is,
Yeah.
first of all, I want to commend your your candor about all of this, because that some of that stuff is such incredibly heavy emotion
Yeah.
tied to the experience of it, that it's like the way that you're able to speak about it is incredible. And that's sort of what I want to talk about, is like tempering one's ability to make it through the darkest times is one of those things that it's fun to say, especially if you've watched a lot of kung fu movies like I have. Uh, but when it's time to actually go through the storm,
Yeah.
that is what tempers you. And not everybody makes it. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
everybody makes it through,
I wish I could tell you
and
that
you did, man.
I wish I could tell you that I dealt with it with the greatest of respect and maturity. I've had to go through my own counseling, separate from my wife, separate from my son. I There was a long time that I felt, and there's still a degree of it today, where I failed as a father. I'm the man of the house. Rawr, right?
Right.
Alpha, big dog,
Of course.
testosterone, protect my herd.
Hmm.
I failed. I failed. I fucked up and failed. On top of the fact, I need you to remember I'm the guy who teaches parents how to recognize their children getting exploited. How the fuck did this happen? So there was such I was awash in guilt. It was almost paralyzing. Luckily, I've been able to work through that. And I'm sure there was another event in my life last summer that kind of, if I didn't go get some help in the most extreme way, who knows if we're having this podcast. But I was so angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the guy that hurt my son. I was angry. There was a part of me that was angry that I didn't know about this before. Um, all of these different things. And I went balls to the wall from the moment I found out, March of 2020, till about a year ago, where I finally, like, it was going to kill me. What we have, if you can see what our ranch looks like, some good has come out of this, untamed emotion. It allowed me about 20-hour work days of me out here working my trauma and processing shit by digging trenches and
Yep.
laying infrastructure. You know what I mean? I can sit back now and
Hmm.
kind of in the morning, if you watch my TikToks, I'll kind of be like, man, look at this fucking sunrise. It wasn't that way a year
Hmm.
ago. At that time of the day, I was in my second set of clothing because the first set was already too dirty and I was soaked through in sweat because I was out here just fucking pounding sand, man, like in the most extreme way. Will it probably cost me some years on the back end of my life? Probably, but I'm enjoying right now, like this August 31st, 30th, whatever the fuck it is.
31.
Okay,
Hmm.
August 31st, 2024. I'm good. Like I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad that I was able to work through all that. And I told you that I was going to share some dark things. I want to put a bow on this portion. My son is doing great. My son is engaged. He is in college on the dean's list, going to college to be a defense lawyer. His level of empathy for people is, I'm so fucking
Through the
proud of
roof.
him, dude. I'm so proud of him.
Hmm.
He's the best of me. He's the best of me and better.
That's so good to hear, man. And I really want to touch on something that you said today, August 31st. I'm good.
Yeah.
And oftentimes my whole spiel here on the internet is that we all want to make the world kind of a better place, even if that just means our own world, depending on people's perspective. But finding the will to be okay with today is really difficult for people.
Yeah.
And those who attain it, there's so many different paths to get to this place of like, I'm okay. Some people find it through walking a path of Christ or the Buddha, or
Yeah.
maybe they find it in horticulture or, raising cattle or sewing. Some people find their Zen in so many different places. And that's really what I want to touch on is there anything that you would say to someone that maybe was the overarching lesson that your character had to learn, that your hero had to learn on the hero's journey?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's always some moral. There's always some moral involved, right? When we go through the hell, there's some moral we learn about ourselves, some power we glean from it. What was yours going through that experience?
There's a there's a gentleman named Eckhart Tolle. Are you familiar with Eckhart Tolle?
Of course.
Of
Hmm.
course you are. Of course you are.
Hmm.
I got hit. My wife downloaded his audio book on my phone without my permission uh, last fall.
Kind of like the U2 album that one time.
Oh, dude, what the? It's still on my phone, bro. I, I,
I bet it is.
Apple's a
It's
bitch,
never going away. Hmm.
and it was only after I listened to that and like truly listened, like didn't listen to it while doing things, but sat down and soaked in what that
Mm.
man was talking about. I want to say I can't remember the exact name of the book I'm thinking of. Doesn't matter. Eckhart Tolle.
It's like the power of now or
That's
something
it.
like that.
That is it. The power of now.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
didn't even realize that I wasn't living in the current. He had an ability to break down, like, let's think about what you're thinking about right now.
Mhm.
Am I living in the past and thinking about how I failed as a father? Am I way in the future already constructing all these ideas of what life is going to look like or should look like, or what I'm going to fail at or what I'm going to succeed at? It doesn't matter. What the fuck is happening right in front of you at this moment? Do you ever just stop and like look to your right and left? That book, I want to like, no matter how I sound on your podcast, a lot of these revelations I'm telling you are relatively new. I wasn't born into this way of thinking. It took a lot of work, a lot of self reflection, a lot of admitting I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And neither do you. You have no fucking clue. You can be confident and wrong. And I lived 44 and a half years of my life very confident and very fucking wrong. I would really encourage anyone that is struggling with those things, if you catch yourself and your mind is wandering to the past and you're stuck there on a loop, or your mind is wandering to the future and you're kind of paralyzed in fear of the unknown, you
Mm.
really need to listen to some Eckhart Tolle. I know that you said I knew what your answer was going to be just by your demeanor, and I've never heard you talk about him on social media. I knew you knew who he was. Of course you do. And that should tell all of your listeners everything they need to know about what we're talking about. You are seeing that type of teaching manifests through the two men you're watching on your screen, or the two men you're listening to in your vehicle or through your ear pods right now. I couldn't recommend him more. Now, is there other things that have happened that require probably a deeper explanation for Troy? Yeah, I mean, psychedelic therapy is my biggie. Like that has
Mhm.
altered my life in ways. It It re hemmed my DNA. I'm a different human than I was a year
Yeah.
ago. Psychedelic therapy
Yeah.
is a powerful, powerful tool. It's so powerful
Yeah. When wielded
with the
correctly.
utmost
And
respect and reverence. Yes.
I have to admit that my first awakening experiences with it were not with the utmost respect. It was with the
Most are.
most impulsive curiosity.
Yeah.
And you know, to back up a couple steps though, with the Eckhart Tolle thing, the thing that I found is that level of awareness where all of a sudden I tell people I'm a camera guy, right? That's my business. I'm a photographer, videographer, and I say our entire lives we see the movie through these cameras right here,
Yep.
and it's always this first person view. Every once in a while it's so important to like pull yourself out and try to be the other cameraman in the room, and like what would that look like to you if you saw you doing exactly what you were doing just now,
Yeah.
feeling the way you were feeling, acting the way you were acting, allowing your habits to go in one direction or another over the course of days, weeks, or months, right? And so that level of awareness can come from so many paths, I've found. So for me, it was a book called Conversations with God. I read it, gosh, probably when I was 18 or 19. It was by Neil Donald Walsh. Um, and that led me down a whole path of reading the Tao Te Ching, the Buddhist Four Noble Truths, and of course, revisiting the Old Testament and New Testament after growing up Catholic. And what I was finding was that there was always these common threads that I was finding of living in this this moment, this level of awareness in yourself. And so I would say to anybody, read the Eckhart Tolle, explore it, because maybe one author might not evoke what we're talking about in you, but that doesn't mean that somebody else speaking a similar ancient, like principled truth might resonate with your ears or your mind in a different way. So I think the large lesson is just don't stop exploring people who talk about themselves in this way of trying to look at myself.
And it
We say that all the time, you got to take a look at yourself, and it's like, but that's like looking inward. You know what I'm saying?
and it's difficult.
It's there's a disconnect there.
Like it should come with like a fucking parental warning sticker. It is very,
For
very
real.
hard to, as you put it, take that third party camera or your outside the body experience and truly look at yourself and your behaviors. Why are you acting that
Mhm.
way? Why are you saying
Mhm.
those things? And if you're honest, there's a there's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that comes with that's all part of fucking healing, y'all. It's not unique to you.
Yep.
You shouldn't feel bad about it. It is the human condition. And if you don't address those things, you are going to be stuck in what some people call the matrix or being an NPC or all these other fucking cliche things that people love to say. Uh you have to deal with that. It's shadow work. You probably like there's probably some of you that have had your FYP show up with your TikTok shop of shadow work workbooks. Like what the fuck is that?
Yeah. The
Hey,
shadow work journal changed my life, bro.
right, right. But for some people, like it, you have to do that shit. You probably weren't like, what the fuck is shadow work? It's what we're talking about
Well,
right now. It's what we're talking about right now. And it's being
yeah.
honest. Stop trying to bullshit yourself. There was a time, dude, there was a time where I would journal and I would write things down. This is no lie. I would write things down with the assumption or expectation that someone else would eventually read it. So I'd write it to benefit me, even if it wasn't true. It's such fun. Your
Mhm.
brain's a fucking crazy thing. Your ego will make you do
Yes, it
some
is.
wild shit. And if you don't recognize it, like, welcome to the fucking loop because it's gonna, you are where you're gonna be in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years.
I believe and there's so many other topics I want to make sure that we cover. But
Sure.
while we're here, there's something I've been really thinking about, and I want your input on. Is I believe that delusion and faith are this is the same concept dressed up in different words, and it gives us different feelings when we say those words, but I believe they're the same thing. When you're delusional enough in something that doesn't exist yet, maybe a future version of yourself or a reason to live or all these things, that is faith. It is faith, and maybe it's only delusional if it's in something that is quote unquote not real. But I've really been stuck in this place of when people manifest or they say their gratitude list or these things, it's because the brain actually has the power to make them real if you can seat them properly enough in your brain, if that makes sense. Like your beliefs really can shape like the world that you're interacting with.
Y-
It's a very bizarre thing. And I think if you believe it to be true, it your brain almost like makes it true. In the same way that if you're having a dream and you get shot in the leg and you wake up and your leg hurts, that is literally your brain making something real that wasn't real. Or was it?
eh,
Is it only real because the brain makes it real?
right.
Am I making sense here?
You are making sense. I'm going to share some really personal things here. So I grew up in a very rigid evangelical home. Um, a lot of the years was very hellfire and brimstone type evangelical, right?
Hmm.
And your boy was like my degree is I have a college degree, and thank you U.S. Navy for paying for that. Uh, in world religion, compliments of Liberty University. That's a whole different fucking conversation. But
Love that.
I was
Didn't
an
know that.
ordained pastor in 2015. So a little bit of background of my faith and religious beliefs, right? Did I truly believe what I was living though? I had that you want to talk about like the buzzword of this generation is deconstruction, and it is a very real thing. I will warn
Hmm.
you though, the moment you decide to go down that path, ultimately there is some freeing aspects to it, but fuck is it scary. It is terrifying, and I'll explain
Yep.
why. No matter what was happening in my life from conception to about 7, 8 years ago, I could always explain away with the help of faith or biblical twisting to fit the narrative that I needed it to fit.
Hmm.
But when you walk away from stuff like that fully and you're like, okay, I'm going to look at this through a new set of eyes, it's like your foundation crumbles and you're free falling down a pit and there's nothing to grab onto. And I fell for about 3 years, and
Hell yeah.
it scared the fuck. Deconstruction is not fun. It's not recreational. It's not hip. It's not a fad. It's not cool. You better be ready to change everything about yourself, and you better enter it with a sense of maturity and reverence and fear. In the best, fear isn't always a bad thing, but bro, it was so fucking scary. What started this for me was
Hmm.
in the midst of me finishing my degree, I was attending a church in Pensacola, Florida, and I was part of a small group called Alphas. I personally felt that I was beyond what this class had to teach, but Alpha small group was a small group born out of this church that was kind of like Christianity 101. And it all culminated after 12 weeks where one of the associate pastors, I'll never forget him, I won't name him here, He came to these people's house that hosted the small group, and you were going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. If you don't know what that means, being baptized in the Holy Spirit in the world that I grew up in invoked you speaking in tongues, uh,
Hmm.
which that's a whole different conversation. Just know it sounds wild if you ever hear it or are a part of it. And I was so excited because up until this time, I was involved in this religion, in this higher education, in this ordination process, 1000% based on hope I'm right. But here was something tangible that fit within my five senses that was gonna kind of concrete me into this belief system. And I was the last person to go up in this person's living room. I had just watched six other people get what's called slain in the spirit. And I watched them speak in tongues and get filled with the Holy Ghost. And there's some people that are hearing me and understand what I'm saying. There's other people thinking, what the fuck
Hmm.
is this dude talking about? There's meanings to all
Oh
these
yeah.
words I'm saying. And I walked up there
Yeah.
and I watched this man did the whole thing to me that he did to these other people. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing happened.
Hmm.
And then in my head, I'm starting to think, do I just fake it? Because now it's awkward. And then my head goes to, were they faking it because they felt awkward? Are we all faking? Like, what's going on? Ultimately, I didn't. I just kind of let the time pass, and I got some explanation at the end of as to why I didn't receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, even though like I felt like
Hmm.
I wanted it more than anyone. Like
Of
I was
course.
so open to it. Like, give me this. I want this. I'm
Yeah. I
yours.
know that feeling.
You do this
Yep.
one thing for me, I'm yours forever. I'll go preach on the street and sell all my shit today. That's where I was.
Yep. Hmm.
And that started a cycle of me starting to question everything. Ultimately, to where, I mean, I have 1000% walked away from Western evangelical Christianity. I think it is there is good that comes out of it. Uh, I want to make sure I don't talk in totalities. There is good that comes out of it. There is a lot of fucking bad. Boy, is there a lot of bad. Jesus was real.
I,
Jesus lived. There
sure.
he walked this earth. Uh
Yeah.
I just think that
I think
go ahead.
isn't it the way though? It's just the I once heard someone, and I believe of all places, it was on like the Colbert Report back in the day.
Okay.
He had this woman from India, and when he was asking her about Hinduism, he was like, I'm Catholic, and how do I become Hindu? And she just kind of chuckled and looked at him and was like, well, one doesn't become Hindu, one practices Hinduism.
Yes.
And I remember that punching my soul directly in the nuts.
Yeah.
That jolted me, and that awakened something in me that I can't describe. And it made me connect with the Christ story so much more. And I'm a lot like you. I don't have a name for my beliefs, which drives a lot of people who do have names for their beliefs. It drives them crazy.
Yeah.
But um, it made me resonate with this path of Christ, or the path of the Bodhisattva or the Buddha, is where it's like there is just the way that you're living. That's it. That's like the end of the sentence. There is just the way
Yeah.
that you're living. And all of the other stuff is to help us navigate how to do that for ourselves and what it looks like when we try to help one another do that as a collective society. That's all.
It's-
But people take it so much more seriously than that. And That deconstruction, by the way, which you say, people need to have a reverence for it
Woo!
it is because you end up going down the spiral. You start deconstructing your religion or your government or even your own self, and you start this downward spiral. But the thing that's really funny is that those people who have been on that path for a long time,
Yeah.
it's almost like we're the like Lord of the Flies or something. We've been in this like existential place for so long that we're like, yeah, 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 come on. Or even worse, we're like at the top of the cliff, pushing them down into existential despair. I think it's mischievous sometimes, um, because I think otherwise we won't willingly go through it. You know what I mean? It's like when Neo gets unplugged in the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's it's his curiosity that drives him. But what's interesting about that story is that once they put him in the chair and the like goo comes up and goes, and he's resisting it. All of a sudden, he realizes what he signed up for. And then when he's in the computer simulation and Morpheus is explaining everything, he starts vomiting. He's just like, "This, no, 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 I don't know about this, I don't know about this." And I think it's because giving God a name and giving the path that you walk a name helps us feel like there's a path that we can trust, and that's it.
Bro, can
Like
we talk
we
about
can't be
that
too attached.
fucking movie? That,
Please,
oh
I saw it
my,
at 14.
what,
I didn't even know what it was.
I'm
A
gonna,
buddy of mine was like, "We're going."
there are
I walked
two,
out of that theater a changed boy
there are
with my
two
peach
movies
fuzz
that I have
mustache.
watched in the last 60 days with the new eyes I have, and I'm gonna get into how I achieved these new eyes here in a second. That they're different movies totally, and it blew my fucking mind. One was The Matrix, and the other one was Avatar. So,
Hmm.
why did I watch these movies? Why were they recommended to me? And what was it that led me there? So another dark event. I promise you my life isn't full of trauma. We're just kind of touching on the heavy hitting aspects of Troy's life right now. But
You're such a ray of sunshine, though, that it's. I think it's totally fine if you need. If we, I think we do need to talk about the fucked up stuff because it's
oh,
going to give
so
that juxtaposition. Because you're a great energy, man.
this part here is who I am, why I'm sitting here today and speaking like I'm speaking and acting like I'm acting. The catalyst for that was June 16th of 2023. So we're talking 14 months ago and some change. I got a call from I was raised, I told you I was raised in a very rigid evangelical home. My mother was bipolar, manic bipolar, borderline schizophrenia. Mental health is something that has been a part of my life from the get-go. There was multiple attempts, suicide attempts by my mother growing up. And unfortunately, on June 16th of last year, she succeeded. Um, my mother took her
Wait,
life.
so she had a history of it?
Oh, going back to my birth. Yes. My mother had a mental illness, extreme. She was agoraphobic to boot. She hadn't left the house in 7 years, leading up to
Oh
her
my,
death. And my mother took her
wow.
life, uh, 14 months ago. And I don't know if you know this or your listeners know this, but did you know that a suicide is not a crime scene? And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. If a suicide occurs, EMS shows up, law enforcement will show up, the coroner will show up, all that good stuff. But it's not considered a crime scene. They don't tape it off. There is no fucking specialty organization that comes in and cleans up the mess. So when you factor in the mechanism, and mind you, this is my mother, so I'm not being disrespectful because it's all part of the story. And if I want people to hear this story in hopes that they heal, you have to hear some really difficult shit. Okay. My mother's mechanism for taking her life was a 20 gauge shotgun in our family home. Me, as Troy, fucking superhero, dumb shit Troy with his monkey ass brain, my wife and I immediately go up to Iowa where this happens. I have two baby sisters, and then obviously I have my father. I don't want my father to have to clean it up. There is a cleanup process. Obviously, it's a 20 gauge shotgun. I don't want my baby sisters to even fucking remotely see anything of that. I'm the big brother. Also, I'm also dealing with the fact that I have other things that I feel I have red ink in the ledger to deal with. So super fucking Troy will come in and save the day. And I did. That is what I did. I cleaned up my mother's suicide scene on June 18th of 2023. It's as gory as you think it is. There's a company called
I'm
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is there not either a state service
Yeah.
or would a state service clean up a crime scene?
So there's a company called ServPro, SERV-PRO, and they'll come up and they'll like they are licensed to remove like bodily fluids because there's like laws and restrictions and litigation that comes with
Oh, yeah, a
right,
biohazard
right,
and
right,
what
right.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's still so. Ooh,
I just felt it too, man.
okay. So the ceiling in my parents' foyer was like a stucco ceiling. It's like that popcorn fucking shit that people do to their
I
ceiling.
I remember.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Quite 90s of them, 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
And
reminds me of the smell of Kmart.
blue light special, baby. Uh,
Mhm.
and so while we paid $7,000 for ServPro to come
To
in
serve to
to
serve, bro?
clean up the majority, right? The pools, the
Oh god.
the parts that were in the track of the sliding glass door. There's the track that the glass door will slide through. There was, just things there. Uh, like the remodel, what was sprayed on the wall and the damage to the ceiling still had to be dealt with. And so I went in then with my shout out to my brother-in-law Kale. I fucking love you, dude. Um, he went with me and we cleaned it up, respackled the ceiling. That way, when my father crossed that threshold to go home, he didn't have to see that. And at the time, like I was able to compartmentalize all that until I wasn't able to.
Dissociate.
Yeah, until I wasn't able to, which happened
Mhm.
about late November, December of last year. I was on a podcast called the To Be Better podcast. It's a very popular podcast with a couple named Chris and Peaches on my birthday, December 2nd of last year. And it's recorded both visually and if you go back and just go to their YouTube and see me in their studio, I don't recognize that man. That is peak spiral into chaos. And
Mm.
everything just kind of came
In
unglued.
what way? Like, was it
I
what was it what was your
whew,
behavior like?
so number the, already I had PTSD just from combat, right? And this kind of re-triggered the gore of it, kind of
Mm,
re-triggered some things. But on top of that,
mm,
like I was very close to my mom.
mm. I'm so sorry, man. Take all the time you need, man. Super proud of you for being able to do that, man. I don't know that I don't know the type of strength it would take to do that.
Um, no note was left. It just ended. I was having a hard time reconciling that. So much so that I was ready to give up. I was done. This was too painful. And man, this is the third time I've told this story today. I've cried every time, but it's whew, just hitting a little different this time.
You're not alone, man. I'm here with you, and I want you to know that the strength that it takes to look at it over and over again and face it is exactly why humans are even still here at all. This is why, man. I respect you so fucking much, because when I look at human history, ice ages, wars, famines, plagues, the most gruesome and lowest of times, it's people who have the gift to keep going. They're the reason we're here. Like we don't get to experience the high highs and the love and the joy of life unless people step up when it's really hard. And I respect the fuck out of you, man. I really do.
Woo, that was intense. Thank you. So,
It's a lot, man.
uh, December was just a really dark time. I had made a plan. I had wrote a note. I was ready to exit stage left. And thank God for my wife. I think I brought it up earlier that if I don't bring her up enough, it's a failure on me. So I'm about to bring her up again. Uh, I had a bout with alcoholism after my deployment to Afghanistan, late aughts, so 08, 09, 10. And it was about that time that documentaries started coming out on YouTube about ayahuasca. Had no idea what it was. Amazon forest, shamans, plant medicine. All I knew was that there was people going and doing it and saying that they were being healed of alcoholism. That's all I knew about ayahuasca back at the time. And I had expressed back then, like, man, I'd love to go do that and not feel the urge to drink anymore. It was a passive remark that never manifested into anything. The desperation of my wife in December and January, this past December and January, was at such a level. She saw it. Like, she knew if there wasn't a radical intervention, she was going to be a widow soon.
Mm.
And so she booked, paid for, and planned an ayahuasca retreat for me in early February of this year. I reluctantly went. I was just, I didn't care. I didn't care about anything.
Hmm.
I want to prep it.
Exhausted.
Oh, just let this be over. It's just pain. I am in so much pain mentally. Uh,
Yeah. Which I think people confuse with
whew,
depression and suicidal thoughts. I feel like a lot of people see this like music video version, crying in the rain and razor blades in the shower and all this dramatic shit, where it's like anytime that I
whew,
felt low, it was because I was tired.
yeah.
I mean, wouldn't
Yeah.
you? Is that accurate? I
It
was just like, I'm just
tired because your
fucking
brain is running a
done.
fucking marathon every 4 minutes.
Yep,
Like
yep.
I
And
was
you're just
stuck in
done.
this thought loop. And that shit
Hmm.
is exhausting. What could I have done to
Yep.
change that my son doesn't get hurt? What could I have done to make sure my mother doesn't fucking start a shotgun? these are heavy fucking things that I am they're rocks that I'm putting in my backpack and strapping on every day and carrying the fuck around. And it just got too heavy.
Yep.
It just got too heavy. So I went.
Mhm.
Before I share that experience, I want to make sure I say I am not saying my experience with psychedelic therapy or plant medicine or ayahuasca or DMT is what would happen for everybody. I want to make that crystal clear.
It's important.
But what it's done for me can't be explained on your podcast. It saved my life. It didn't save my life, it changed my life. I'm a different human being after my experience with ayahuasca. I refuse to downplay it for the sake of not sounding exaggerative. It was a radical transformation within my DNA and how I saw life. Period.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
so powerful. I mean, powerful.
Yeah,
Uh
I think we can try to explain it because it's one of my favorite things to do. The realm of philosophy is my favorite zone.
yeah.
I think,
Ooh,
and people again, they come at me for this because I'm gonna dodge every single theology and clinical psychologist with some jujitsu here. And I don't know what the proper martial arts term would be. I'm just going to
yep.
dodge it all by saying it like this: just because my brain says it's real doesn't make it real.
That's right. That's right.
That's the lesson. Again, just like a dream, you're being chased by Michael Myers in your dream, and oh fuck, he comes around the corner and and you wake up and your neck hurts. You're like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, your brain made something real that wasn't real. Same with our grief. And it's not that the event that caused it wasn't real, that was real. The life you spent with this person or in this situation was real. But now the chemicals and my association to that memory is within my control. And just because my brain says it's a certain way or that I need to feel a certain way about it doesn't make it true. And I think psychedelics do an excellent job of that because you're sitting there, somebody's playing Sublime or some fucking Jerry Garcia on the acoustic guitar, and you look at your friend and all of a sudden their face looks a little wobbly.
yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute. Your brain is saying the walls are breathing, the colors are vibrant, you see people's energies and all the stuff I've heard in my years as a musician. But it doesn't make it real.
Yeah. That's
But it
right.
sure as hell looks real and it sure as hell feels real in the moment. And I think psychedelics have a really special place in human history for that reason. I think if you're smart with it,
Yeah.
you can use it to cultivate that path in yourself of realizing, wait, I am the master of my imagination. And the happier of a place that is, the happier of a place this will be for my physical body to exist, if that makes sense.
It
That's at least what I took away from psychedelics.
it does. It's this retreat I went to, right? Uh I knew this was kind of like a last ditched effort. So there are things that you do leading up to it that you are in contact with the shaman. They have you follow what's called a dieta, which is a 2 week like what you should eat. There's a like to cleanse the toxins out of your body. I've never been a big psychedelic. I was not a recreational user growing up. I didn't get high on these things for funsies. So I kind of was like, I was in such a desperate spot. Like, my wife has paid for this. I'm about to travel really far and go do this thing that, I mean, who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But I'm going to follow it to a
Hmm.
T because if I have to remain on this realm, I need to have some sort of healing. And that's what they're offering. So I'm going to follow their thing. So I followed the whole diet thing, and we talked for a while about my upbringing as an evangelical, and I knew we would end up at this very moment of this specific story, and I was laying groundwork for this part. I had thought that I had kind of moved out and deconstructed enough. that I
Mm.
was not going to have an issue traveling to go see a shaman to partake in plant medicine to seek healing. Now, some of you think, like, what the fuck is he talking about? Let me tell you something. You grow up in a lot of evangelical homes. This, what I'm about to tell you I did, is a big fucking no no, is an
Oh yeah.
absolute big no no. You are seeking healing through anyone other than Jesus Christ. You are seeking
Hmm.
religious counsel from anyone other than a Christian, whatever. You're opening yourself up to demonic possession. That's how I was raised. And if you weren't raised that way,
Yep.
good for you. But that's the reality of a lot of American Western evangelical homes, including mine, right? So I'm there, and we're about to go into our first ceremony on night one. They gave me this little mat. I'm out in the woods. I'm laying under this tree, and I'll never remember it because I have now been to 2 retreats. I've been through 6 ceremonies, and I've laid under the same tree for all 6. It's my tree. I love that tree. I've gone through and seen a lot of things with this tree, but I'm seeing this tree for the first time. And I get called up. Uh, the men are called up to go take the sacrament, which it is. It's a religious sacrament. It is not a
Hmm.
party drug. Ayahuasca is the single most potent psychedelic you could put in your body on this planet. And let me tell you, that's fucking true. Okay. It,
Hmm.
it is nothing. It is nothing to be played with. You better know who you're getting it from. Your set and setting better be proper, and you better have a
Hmm.
facilitator that knows what the fuck they're doing, or you will go
Hmm.
crazy. Please,
Hmm.
I'm begging you, if you ever go down the path, which I encourage you, if you feel called to do this, go do it. Do it right. Do it right. So I go and I take my first dose of ayahuasca. And I go back and I sit on my mat, and the sun is just setting where I'm at. And then everyone's quiet. Everyone's kind of like in this anticipatory state of when's it going to kick in and what's going to happen. Because most of us were newbies, right? And all of us had taken our dose. And then there's this piercing scream from a man across the camp. There's probably 50 people at this retreat, 40, 50 people. On the other side of this wooded area where we're out in the woods laying down, I just hear this man just start fucking screaming. He's like, now mind you, we are all of us have already took the medicine. There's no the only way out
Yeah.
is
There's no going back.
the only way out is
Yeah.
through. And it hadn't kicked in
Hmm.
yet, and it's my first time. And he starts screaming about,
Oh yeah.
I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. You've put a demon in me. I don't and all of a sudden, 44
The fear.
years, the fight or flight in me, bro, just went
Mm.
whoom. And everything in me just, I was like, get the fuck up and run, run, run right now. Lucky for your boy, I'm kind of like anal about researching shit before I get involved. I talked to probably a dozen people before I went. It was like, give me some advice here. Like I respect the medicine. I understand what I'm about to do to what a newbie can understand. What would you tell you who is in my shoes now before you went your first time? And collectively, what everyone's universal advice was the term just say yes. No matter what, no matter where this medicine takes you, no matter what you're feeling, submit. If you fight it, it's going to be the worst experience of your life. If you are at a point where you're traveling to another country to drink a fucking plant to try to get some healing, you know you're already in a bad place, bro. You're already in a bad place. So it's going to tell you, or it's going to take you where you need to go. You're here
Hmm.
because of dark shit, and you got to face it. So just say yes. And I remember hearing this man lose his fucking mind for about 15 minutes. He's just screaming.
Oof.
He's screaming, I don't accept. I don't accept. And so that's what I'm hearing in my head, waiting for the first time for this scary fucking shaman plant medicine to kick in. And I remember about 10 minutes into his screaming, I took a really deep breath and I'm laying on my back on my mat under this tree. And I look up through the branches at like the orange sky because the sun was setting. I took a deep breath and I said, yes. And I let go of all that fear. And immediately the medicine kicked in. Might be coincidental, might not be. But I went on a fucking, I was not in this realm, bro. Like,
Nope.
it's not like go to a Metallica concert, take some fucking shrooms, dude. It's like
Yeah.
go talk to your fucking dead mother on Saturn and close some loops about life and let her tell you how proud she is of you. And that she's no
Yep.
longer in pain. And that it's okay. And that she's proud of you for going to get healing. It was such an amazing experience. Painful, painful. There was nothing recreational
Oh yeah.
about this trip at all, but I was able to just
Oh sure.
check that
Think
box,
about
man.
think about the word you just said, recreation, recreation. It is the very essence of recreation, recreating yourself.
Dude,
You know what I'm saying?
that word will forever hold meaning to me because the next part of this story is I came home from this ayahuasca retreat. I documented everything. Video, audio, and journaling. There are journals that document that stuff I haven't even shared on social media, like the the dotted I's and crossed T's of everything I remember about my ayahuasca journeys. But I also made TikToks, and there's a playlist called My
Hmm.
Aya Experience, and it went fucking dumb viral. And I ended up getting invited to testify before fucking Congress in April. Troy Ulshoeffer, retired Navy vet, 3 months ago wanted to fucking take his life. I find myself on April 18th sitting on Capitol fucking Hill talking to Mike Johnson and the rest of his fucktards about psychedelic therapy and how it's healed me. And I remember after I get done testifying before Congress, we had a bunch of one-on-one meetings, mostly with GOP lawmakers, because let's face it, regardless of what you think politically, it is the right that has a lot of apprehension towards plant medicine. Insert whatever
Oh
fucking
yeah.
reason they have. And I'll never forget,
Scheduled substances in general.
I sat
Mhm.
down across the table from Tommy Tuberville, Katie Britt, Mark Kelly, a number of different senators, representatives, what have you. And the word that kept getting fucking used when I would share my story is, well, we have a concern that it may become recreational. And I'm like, you don't know fucking dick about psychedelic therapy because there's nothing fun, recreational about this at all. It is for desperate people in desperate times that are finally just, I have nowhere else to go. I've been abusing alcohol, abusing drugs. I've talked to my pastor. I've called BetterHelp. I've done all these things and nothing seems to be working. And I'm at the end of my rope. And my whole goal was the reason I was there is with a group called Balance Veterans Network. Here's their shirt. Kind of fitting, right? They were there advocating for medical cannabis for veterans and they needed somebody to
Mm.
talk about psychedelics. And so here we are. And they brought me in and I was stonewalled by almost every turn, even though the VA has kind of lightened up and started things like ketamine therapy and ibogaine therapy, which are very powerful things that can help. Did I sound like Donald Trump? I felt like I sounded like Trump. Very powerful.
The
It,
most powerful,
it
very
most
powerful.
most powerful psychedelics. Anyway, I have a bad Trump impression. Plus, fuck him. But
Me too. I do it anyway.
uh, they just didn't want to listen, man. There is such a
Oh, of
staunch
course not.
stigma about psychedelic therapy that I would go as far as to say how much it's changed me, even politically. Unless you've gone through a couple of psychedelic therapy sessions, I don't think you warrant to be in charge of anything when it comes to this country. Like any person, any politician that went to an ayahuasca retreat, I would probably they're going to come back with empathy, self-reflection, just a very changed person. I wish that would be like a prerequisite at this point. Send Kamala
Yeah.
and fucking old Trumpster down to Brazil for a week and do 3 ayahuasca ceremonies and then have the debate. I would love to hear what they have to say. It will radically change you.
I think again, this for me, this is like one of those modalities, right? There's so many paths to healing. And what you're talking about is essentially coming back into your own body, what my friend calls coming home to self, right?
Yeah.
And when we're anxious, we're consumed with the future. But it's not just the Hollywood version. It's literally thoughts of worry and fight or flight are constantly penetrating your thoughts. And then when we're depressed, it's like the past is doing the same thing. Neither of which are happening right now, which is why I love Taoism and Buddhism of like being grounded in the awareness of the moment and in the
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's so many paths to it. And I feel like psychedelics, again, I feel like psychedelics, I love what you're saying about doing them in a responsible
Phew.
environment
Have to.
that is curated and all that. But I still feel like it's kind of it's like a cheat code in a way because
Absolutely.
but it's not that it's bad. It's just
Nope.
there are monks who spend their entire lives trying to have that separation of like mind and body so that again, that's that third person camera
Ego
thing.
death.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? The ego death,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And and I loved the fact that my psychedelic experience was with people who were experienced, but it wasn't in like a lab setting. There were no EMTs on standby or anything. It was largely experimental
Sure.
rather than recreational or something like that. But the epiphanies that I had about myself
Phew.
were only because I was able to leave my mind and be in my body and vice versa. I could leave both of them and see myself like laying there on the floor next to the record player. And and this is something funny when you and I had chatted on the phone about scheduling this is for the first time in my life, I had that experience totally sober with a friend of mine recently who does sound healing with these bowls and it's similar to your ayahuasca journey because she's like, you had to come check this out. It's at the beach. And so it's gorgeous. We're living in northern Ohio, right on Lake Erie. And
Yeah.
so show up with my yoga mat, lay it out in the sand, and the waves are crashing, and you hear kids playing in the park in the distance, their laughter and chit chat. And she starts, I'm thinking it's going to be relaxing. Like, whatever, man. I'll try something. I try anything. And it changed me. It was the first time that something had been unlocked in me to allow me to access it without taking anything, which is like what we're talking about. So I
Yeah.
think,
My wife
but the
does it.
clarity with which I had that was, yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah.
That's so crazy to me
Yeah.
that she does that. Does it have like a similar effect on you? Are you able to
Absolutely. I
walk with yourself?
So it's so funny because I make a lot of satirical content. So people they have a choice. To decide.
Oh, that's the part of your intro that I forgot. I said, and the man who delivers some of my favorite yo mama jokes this side of TikTok. That was all part of your intro, and
Well,
I'm leaving, man.
along with
I've failed you as a host, and I'm done.
unbelievable, unbelievable. But along with the mama jokes, I have like this whole playlist of like, don't forget to macro your micro. People think that I'm like constantly using psychedelics. I'm not a fan of them in that way. I've been to 2 ayahuasca retreats. Uh, I have microdosed psilocybin a handful of times. I've never done like the hero dose of psilocybin, nothing like that. My wife is very much like this world we're talking about, this type of spiritual walk, Buddhism, Taoism, things of that nature. Like we have
Mhm.
200 yards over my left shoulder on my homestead is a like we call it the Zen Den, and it's got
Hmm.
sound bowls. And my wife, with the people that stay out here, my wife will do sound therapy or meditation or breath work, yoga. And yes, I have been able to achieve all of the things that have come with psychedelic therapy. Let me say it like this: I recommend psychedelic therapy that need help through a fire hose. They're at a point where they
Yeah.
need to stick the end of tap into a fire hydrant, take the other end of the hose and stick it right in your mouth and crank that bitch full fucking open, full throttle, right?
Mhm.
That's where I was at last winter,
Mhm.
hence why I did it. I don't require I'm not I have no ayahuasca retreat planned for the future. I'm not saying I'll never
Mhm.
do it again, but it has opened my eyes, allowing me to know that here is the things that you need to do. Here are different techniques that you can acquire and achieve these same levels of healing without some outside interference. And
Mhm.
my wife has talked about again, I've been married 25 years. My wife has talked about this stuff for decades. And me, Pastor Troy, I just blew that shit off. Oh, that's some fucking wicked mumbo jumbo voodoo, woodoo, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Or just flat out thought it was demonic, right?
Mhm. Most people do. And I think you said it best. It's that ego death. And I think for people who are in desperate situations, if you're in a desperate situation, it's because your mind can't get out of its own way.
That's
You're
right.
stuck in these like loops and these spider webs in your own mind. And I think psychedelics can, in the right circumstances, be like that break glass in case of emergency,
That
where
is
it's
the
like
perfect
you
fucking
call in this.
analogy.
Yep, you call in the special forces to come and basically you
Hurricane
take a hit
Katrina
out
has
on your
hit.
ego.
Activate the National Guard. Activate them.
Yeah, you hire the psychedelic to take a hit out on your ego. It's like this guy's got to go.
but you,
He's got to go.
but just know,
We got to
like
take him out.
when you make that hire or when you call up the National Guard, bitch, it's coming. It's coming and you
Oh
can't
yeah.
stop it. And it comes. Bro, we
Oh,
could talk for fucking days about the ayahuasca ceremonies, like what I saw and what I endured and what was shown to me. I spent 7 hours talking to what I refer to as the teacher in the trees. This face manifested in that tree I told you about. This is ceremony 6. So this is a totally different retreat. And this is my last
mhm.
ceremony. This face manifests in the tree and just starts teaching me. It was a very mellow trip. I was very grateful for it because I had gotten my ass kicked that retreat. This couple ceremonies that I had gone through before this last one had beat the fuck out of me. I thought I had figured out how to let go and surrender. Come to find out, I hadn't. And it was like, no, bitch, you have to let go of this and let go of this, and you're not in
Surprise,
this.
motherfucker.
That's right. And it came through and fucking mollywopped me in the third ceremony. The spirit of ayahuasca is a feminine spirit. It's motherly. It's why they call it was like you'll hear me refer to it as Mother Aya. She loves you, but a mother can correct you with the force of a fucking switch that you picked off the tree in the front yard, or she can hug you. And that last one, it was this beautiful conversation for hours of her just telling me all these things about myself. And just it was just a it was just beautiful. I don't know where I was going with that. I have so many good things to say about it, but I always
Yeah.
always tell people and let them know, like, when you sign up for this, please understand, it's not disco lights, it's not pink elephants, you're not watching some Disney movie, it's not uh what's his name? Oh my god. Who's the dude from Pirates of the Caribbean? Oh my, Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Jesus Christ.
Uh,
So Johnny Depp, he was in that Hunter S. Thompson movie. Do you remember that?
oh, Fear and Loathing in Las
Yeah,
Vegas.
man.
Oh yeah.
So Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas kind of does remnants of what those type of experiences are like. It's nothing fucking like that. Okay? It's nothing
Hmm.
like that. It's every fear, it's every compartmentalized trauma, some that you forgot, that you were like, "Oh, oh fuck, that did happen when I was 8." That has
Hmm.
snowballed into why I am a narcissist, or why I smoke cigarettes, or why I'm an
Hmm.
alcoholic. It's literally, it
Hmm.
will show you the root cause. If you go there to get your alcoholism fixed, it's not like you take ayahuasca and you don't want to drink alcohol. What she does is she takes you to the reason why you feel the urges to be a substance abuser. And typically
That's
it's
right.
some sort of childhood trauma, and then you face it head on. Scary
Yep.
as fuck, bro. Scary as fuck. Yeah.
Some of my favorite moments were, whether psychedelically induced or not, but some of my favorite moments, even in like Reiki therapy and stuff, has been
Reiki therapy, nice.
seeing my I see myself at like 7 or 8 years old, which is around the time when my life-shattering stuff was happening,
Yeah.
and I see him sitting out by this grapevine that we used to have. It never really produced any grapes. They were always so sour. Um, but it was there, and I would always sit next to it and stare out into the field, and I saw myself sitting there, and everything that troubles us, I think it's a good idea to exchange the word trouble for haunt. And when you really think about what that means, it's like when you can go on a journey of healing and actually in your mind go and sit with yourself when you were a kid who had just gone through whatever it was,
Yeah.
and you can talk to them
Yeah.
and be in that space, that you will find out is, it's the memory, it's the ghost of a memory, and it will haunt
Oh,
you if we don't deal with those things. It's so powerful to me that, like, whether it was through ayahuasca or some people have a near death experience, we all know those people.
yeah.
Car accident, they
Yeah.
come out, they're totally like totally different outlook on life. I think there's these moments that bring us to that clarity of like, what are you doing right now?
Y-
What are you doing right now? You know? And it's
yeah.
like that's that parent. And like you said, it can be the gentle parent, or it's like, now, honey, what are we doing?
Mhm.
Or it's the other the other one that's like, pulling out the wooden spoons from the kitchen drawer and
Whip you
stuff.
into
So it's
submission.
yeah, yeah, she'll beat your ass. I actually have Mother Nature, the Gaia on this one. You probably won't be able to see
Oh,
it on
brother, I have to I bought my wife and I's 25th. It's beautiful. My wife and I's 25th wedding anniversary was last March. So a month after my first ayahuasca ceremony. And I mean, we didn't even get into how that's healed my marriage. Like, I came home a different husband fully. But
Mm,
I tell you this because I talked about the Zindan. I bought her a 2 foot ceramics handmade statue of Gaia, and it's in ours. It's beautiful. It's in a couple of my TikToks that I've shared. Um,
that's amazing.
oh, it's absolutely stunning. My wife and I are actually about to go the second weekend of September. The one of the facilitators from my ayahuasca retreat lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, and my wife and I are going to take
Oh,
a
nice.
weekend and go down there. And she does Reiki healing, and neither one of us have done that. And so we're going to participate in that in a couple of weeks. I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that.
It's such a great space to be in, man. And one thing that I do want to say is my entire thesis, man, I was a political science major for a long time. I've talked about the politics of things, the philosophies, the geopolitical stuff, the cultural stuff. I am an only child who hung out with all the cliques in high school,
Yeah.
and I cannot stand fighting and infighting and group identities and things like that. They can be fun for a while, but not when they're causing the earth harm. And so my whole mission here is really to try to inspire what I'm calling the slow revolution, the Mr. Rogers revolution, where we just do the things we need to do to start making vibrant communities. Like we just start doing the things that we need to do. And I believe that when we do the work internally, it changes the way we show up in all the kind of work, which is why I think Christ even refers to it as the way. Like this is the way, because when you do this and you hold yourself accountable, then
Yes.
you will improve literally every single arena and stage that you grace with your presence, whether that's your marriage, your duties as a father, like the self-care we do to ourselves. It's so insane to me that the unhealthiest places I've been in my own life were the spaces where I was the most disconnected from the moment. I was usually either terrified of the past or terrified of the future.
Yeah, man.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful journey. And so, like, that is why I wanted you on. I mean, we could sit there and say, oh, battled this or works with agencies to provide pathways for people who need healing and from these extreme circumstances. And that would be a great elevator pitch, which I'm going to encourage you to do an elevator pitch at some point for any and all the things that you've got going on. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're an example of what can happen to the planet and to the human race, to humankind, when somebody just shows up and starts walking the way. This is the way that we make life better, is by helping other people and by helping ourselves so that we can better serve other people, and repeat that process over and over again. And you've tapped into it, man. And I'm just really grateful for your time tonight. And to recap, we're talking, first of all, injury, right?
Yep.
While deployed,
Yep.
then a botched surgery.
Yep.
Then we find out what's going on with son
Yep.
being exploited. And now it sends us into this tailspin. You've already been on this homesteading journey, and now you're starting to fold it into helping other people, as long if they can get to recommendation from the state for additional care or whatever. Like, you have this whole nonprofit set up, and now, but your mom has also decided to exit early.
Yep.
She checked out of the hotel of life early, and now you have to deal with that. And now you're in the space of advocating for ways for people to heal that our government deems unorthodox, because it seems to me that your gut reaction, and this is just from our conversations that we've had in total, my gut reaction is when you go through something, you are the hero, because one of your initial reactions is like, well, how do I help so that somebody else doesn't have to feel this?
Mm.
Or if I've found a way out of my suffering, you're the type of energy that goes back into the burning building and says, guys, I found a way out. And
There
I
is a
respect
there
the hell
is
out
a
of that.
lot of that, brother. But I would be remiss, and I have to be totally honest. There's a selfish aspect to it too. Like, there is a part of me that feels like I have to eradicate that red ink that I have in my ledger of life, my failures as a dad, my inability to my self-worth to my mother, that, like, why couldn't she stay alive for me and what have you. So there are selfish ambitions, and and not saying those are a bad thing. I just don't want anyone to ever think that like I'm some selfless, I care for everybody else first, because
It's okay. You deserve it.
it wasn't always
You
that
deserve it,
way.
man.
I had told you about, you had asked me, how did I deal with all those things got revealed about my son? And I told you that I was angry and it burned white. I mean, I was a goddamn go-getter, bro. Like, I was going to solve child exploitation in, 7, 8 minutes. Cause that's how,
Hmm.
like, passionate I was about that. And don't get me wrong, like, we did a lot of good and I did a lot of good, but fires that burn bright and hot burn short. And when that kind of ashed out and I'm left with these pile of ashes after so long because I was just exhausted from running in circles trying to rectify whatever it is I was trying to rectify, ultimately I had to tap into my empathy and
Hmm.
I was out. I didn't know where to go. And it was ceremony number 2. I know this is going to sound crazy. It doesn't matter though, because it's true and it fucking happened, man. I watched these like robotic entities come in with a huge syringe and needle, and there was a capsule in my chest. It was like this empty gelatin capsule that you could see through, and it was like this fucking big, right in the center of my chest. And there was a label in Times New Roman 12 font, and it said the word empathy on it. And I watched them stick this huge syringe and needle through my chest cavity into this capsule and pressed the plunger, and this red fluid filled up this capsule in my chest that was labeled empathy. And I came out of that ceremony and I am now able to not only continue the fight, whether it be exploitation, human trafficking, advocacy, environmental stuff, there's all kinds of shit that I'm trying to help with, but I'm able to do it and tap through a different source. It's not because I'm angry. It's because I genuinely give a fuck. Like I really, really
Mhm.
care. And that type of pacing has longevity to it. I can do this
Amen.
pace for a long time. I did a lot for child exploitation in the summer of 2020 into the spring of 2021. I did a shit ton. I could not do that today. I may want to, the will is in me, but my purpose and my reasoning behind it has changed and my energy is different. Like there's no way I could have kept that pace until I died. Now I'm at a pace that I can just kind of tap into that capsule and use a little bit of that red fluid, whatever the fuck that meant and was. Uh and it's kind of given me legs to run this marathon.
I respect the hell out of that, man. And I want you to know that it's okay to want the things that you wanted. You said something before, and then just as somebody who just, I admire you. I care. Is it's not selfish to have wants that are self-centered. Selfish to me seems like you're willing to do it at the expense of others.
Yeah.
But a true hero, and I think a true community leader, like a true leader in general, is one that will pursue their own self-interests, but they'll do it in a way to make sure that it's like maximized for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, I
I
other
do.
people will benefit. Like, while I am on my mission, I will do this mission not only for myself and my honor, my loyalty, my demons, my ancestors, whatever I'm fighting, but
Yep.
I'm also going to be doing this for the greater good and the people along the way. And you have that energy, man, and that's incredible. So I don't want to take too much of your time. We're almost at 2 hours. How are you sitting?
I I
Everything all right on your end?
I have about so I have about 5 minutes. So my wife just tapped
Okay.
on the window. So yeah, I do have to put a bow on this.
Yeah. No. Like let's take a few rapid fire questions if you don't mind, and
Okay.
let's do that. But before we do that, thank you, man. Anything that you would like to be linked in the section here below the video, make sure you send that to me. I'll make sure it links to whatever it is. I'll
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
shout all the stuff from the mountaintop. So question number one: what is the
Yeah.
first piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's daydreaming and fantasizing about homesteading?
Oh god. Great question. Great question. Uh Here is step number 1. Research your state. There is so much red tape when it comes to this. I know, listen, look, I'm looking at not you, Tony, just your audience. If you
You're over here, but Thank you for that. As someone who is currently daydreaming and fantasizing about the homesteading life, um, trying to escape the matrix. No, no. Yeah. Although it'd be a great place to do it. Um, anyway, yeah, the breadbasket of a nation. Okay. So, question number 2 for me is oftentimes when I was working alongside local governments through the chamber or friends of mine who were in law enforcement, I always noticed this direct need for CPS. CPS needs assistance. Like if they're pulling a kid into foster, they basically show up with a trash bag, and all this kid's life basically goes into a trash bag. And so I had a friend start a nonprofit that provided suitcases um, to kids who were entering into the foster care system, so that their entire life didn't get tossed. I would have to I would have to check, and I probably should know it. He's a dear friend of mine. There might be a female on the board, but my friend was a retired police chief. R- Really, in Ohio? Because it's not. It's yeah. I don't know how nationwide they've gone yet, but they're. I don't. I'm not sure. And he might be affiliated with that one. I'm not sure. I would have to look into it. But my question then is: you're plugged into the state through some channels, right? To be able to provide assistance and in a unique way. So to those viewers who want to help, and maybe it is about the children or whatever, like what would you say to them before they even fill out their paperwork, their license, before they call that first office? Like, what is something you would tell someone who is trying to get into a space of being a helper on that level, to those people who like perhaps need it the most? So the services you provide. So for you guys, it could be someone who is trafficked or something like that, or somebody wants to help with CPS. At the end of the day, these people have experienced certain levels of trauma. You're getting into, like, whether you like it or not, is state sanctioned healing work or something. Hmm. Mm, mm, mhm, mm, mhm, Mm. I think I'm always like trying to take this Mr. Rogers approach where I try not to be too venomous in the things that I say, but I don't know what's worse. Negative, hateful content, violent content, movies, video games, sex everywhere, all the negative stuff that we could say, or people who are giving others a false sense of what it means to be good. Like right now in our society, a good deed is walking up, Mr. Beast giving somebody $10,000 in a Walmart or something, which is cool, but like it's like the not only that, but the real work of helping and being a helper is so nitty gritty and it's grimy sometimes and hard. And it's worth it though. It's worth it though. And so I commend you. That's such a great thing. Is just like be prepared to pour endlessly into cups that may not know how to receive it, let alone give it back. And that's fantastic, man. Yep. And they need it. They've never had that before. That's awesome. And so last question, my friend, and then I'm going to set you free. Make sure you tell the wife I'm so incredibly grateful for you getting me in today, man. Troy, it's been a genuine pleasure. And same, dude. I feel like one day we'll be in the same room. I can't escape that feeling, but I don't know. And that sounds more cryptic than it should. If this was a crime documentary, it'd be like this was the moment that they knew. But anyway, so um, yeah, exactly. If it goes black and white, the red letters. So if you have seen the void, you've seen the blackness, you've seen the reason to give up, right? And you kept going. And so much to the point where you can laugh with me now and you can say that you're grateful to be alive today. That is a turn of events that feels so mysterious and far away even, or sometimes not even possible for some people. That what What was the first thing you thought of today? Is there a gratitude list that you make at the beginning of the day? Like what's the very first few moments of your morning like? I, uh I love that so much. No, and we've covered a lot of ground today, but I want people to know that big things are possible if you feel so called to do certain big things and roll the proverbial life dice and say, fuck it. And other times, as we've seen with other guests, it's as simple as one of our previous guests overcame the effects of like Lyme disease and toxic mold, all this crazy stuff with like gut health, and took charge of that and is now helping other people. So it always stems from what I've gathered so far are for these citizens, these heroes, these leaders that I'm trying to seek out through the internet is once I've figured out how to fix myself or heal myself or start to put myself back together, I'm in a much more powerful position to facilitate it for other people and not force it on them like dogma, but to create spaces for them to do it on their own. And I'm incredibly, that's right. That's right. I couldn't agree more, man. And that is the way. That is why we try to walk the way. You do it. You're an incredible inspiration. Troy Ulshoeffer, got it that time. Um, I really appreciate your time, man. Enjoy your evening with the wife and the family, and I will look forward to our next interaction, man. You take care of yourself, man. Love you too, man. Thank you. And I'm going to end recording here.